Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be speaking with you about forgiveness. A couple months ago, my dad and I were chit-chatting, and he told me about a conversation that he had with one of my brothers, where my brother stopped for a moment and then said, "Dad, I want you to know that I forgive you." My dad expressed to me that though my brother didn't specify for what, he knew it was for all the pain, the hurt, and the conflict that occurred in the relationship over the years. As I heard about this amends between my brother and my father, my heart swelled, tears welled up in the back of my eyes. I stopped for a moment then, looked at my father, and said, "Dad, I forgive you too." He looked at me, tears in his eyes now, and said, "Thank you, child of mine. Thank you." Forgiveness is easy to talk about in a flight of abstraction. Much harder to ground back down into our lives, because as we do, questions immediately emerge, like, who do I need to forgive? Who do I need to ask for forgiveness from? Broadening the context, who do my biological and cultural ancestors need to forgive? Who do they need to ask for forgiveness from? These are lived questions. They ask something of us, something that we're not always prepared for. Because what they ask is for us to return back into our bodies to painful layers that we've actively suppressed because they were too much to feel in the moment. That's the intelligence of trauma. But the question that forgiveness asks is, are we ready to come back to those places? Are we ready to give them the attention that they're calling out for, to feel them through, to heal? Forgiveness, like saying I'm sorry, is fundamentally an opening of the heart. Someone has hurt or harmed us in some way. We are slowing down to meet the layers of hurt, of anger, rage, confusion, grief. And as we meet them, whether that's in a solo healing practice, in the company of a good friend, with a professional space holder, as we meet them, feeling them through, giving them the time and space they need and deserve. And as we do, allowing them to alchemically transform into peace, into stillness, into love, into gentleness. This alchemical transformation is something that life is calling for, crying out for in every moment. But when we forgive, we're not just healing ourselves, potentially inviting the healing of the person that we're forgiving. We're also healing the relational space. We live in a web of physio-psycho-spiritual interconnectedness. And that web, that matrix, can be cultivated as we do with people that we care for and want to grow closer with. It can be neglected and it can be harmed. And as we find the time, the space, we make the choice to forgive, we not only heal ourselves, but we heal the relational space as well. As we do, we generate new possibilities for connection and co-creativity. John Prendergast, a non-dual teacher and psychotherapist, tells a poignant story that illustrates this point powerfully. He had a hurtful moment with a friend. Something that bred hurt, but also frustration, resentment. It came between them. He was driving one day, and as the story of the hurt arose, that no doubt he had rehearsed in his mind many, many times, instead of following its momentum, he stopped. He relaxed back into his body. He felt the pain, the frustration, and the resentment, and he gave it the time and space to open and to release. As it released, tears came, and as tears came, he found himself spontaneously forgiving his friend. Not a moment later, his phone rings. And who do you think is on the other line? The friend that he had just forgiven. Forgiveness doesn't just heal us, it heals the relational space also. And, as I just said, it generates new possibilities for connection and co-creativity. John Prendergast's friend felt a shift in the field and then felt called to reach out to him. Just the moment that John was ready to reconnect. And then they find each other once again. I'm going to pivot now and talk about two different kinds of forgiveness. I was speaking with a friend recently. Shout out to Austin. They helped me to see that forgiveness isn't just a matter of what John Prendergast did, which is feeling through the layers of pain. We can make a kind of executive decision to let go of hurt, even before we've processed it fully. I'm going to call this cognitive forgiveness, and I think it's a big deal. Let's take an example. You have a friend who has hurt you in some way, and you find yourself, maybe before you're going to bed at night, giving them some impassioned speech or telling them off with great eloquence, like you've done many a nights before. Okay? And there's a time and place for that. But you find yourself going down that old road and you're exhausted. Not just because you're tired, you're exhausted with the pattern. You're going, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm ready to let this go. I'm ready to forgive this person. And as we do that, what are we doing? We're coming out of identification with that part of us that needs to constantly return to the story. And as we let go, we stop holding ourselves and them hostage in the moment of impact. And by the moment of impact, I mean the moment of hurt. We return ourselves and them to the flow of life. Cognitive forgiveness allows for disidentification to occur and opens up the field of possibility. It releases us from going down those same tiresome roads. The second type of forgiveness is somatic forgiveness. And it's what John Prendergast did with his friend. Once we've let go of the story, or another way to say that is actually to move deeper into the story. Instead of just getting lost at the cognitive level, we're moving into the levels and layers of the story that exist emotionally and physically. And as we do, what do? We feel them through. We give them the time, space, care, and attention that they need and deserve. Sometimes we do that alone in a solo healing practice. More often we do that in the company of good friends or professional space holders because we need that co-regulation. We need that added capacity that's given to our systems when we're linked up with other available nervous systems. And as we do feel through those layers, like I said before, they alchemically transform, not just into gentleness and stillness and love, into play, into creativity. They add energy back into our systems and open up the relational field. Now we've not only released ourselves and the other back into the flow of life cognitively, we've done so emotionally and somatically as well. Now I want to pivot again and talk about forgiveness and the divine. If you grew up in a Judeo-Christian home or a Judeo-Christian culture, the United States, Canada, Europe, etc., you might have some very understandable baggage as it pertains to the divine and forgiveness. You may find yourself yelling at the big daddy in the sky, telling him that you don't need his forgiveness, that this whole scheme is a setup. And even as you're yelling at him, you're wondering at another layer if you're going to hell for telling off God. Definitely been there. But you don't stop for it because you must. You're tired of the nonsense. You can't put up with it anymore. A quick aside, the divine loves it when you yell at her. She loves it when you're honest and authentic. Sometimes we can get caught in relationships with the divine, in the dualistic frame, where we feel like we always have to understand God and we're always relating to God lovingly. But I really encourage you to take the gloves off and give her the 1-2. What I mean by that is that God welcomes your anger. The divine invites you to tell her off, to complain to her, to say how unfair this evolutionary world that she's created is, how much pain you've been in, how you feel that she's left you alone in the darkest moments of your life. She wants to hear from you. She delights in you just as you are. Honest, messy, brilliant, imperfect you. Now let's come back to the Judeo-Christian tradition. If we have any karma in this tradition, we may need to do some healing around forgiveness. It's a tangled mess in there. Along those lines, and for the record, I want to say the divine was never angry with you. She was never asking you to repent for your inherently sinful nature, and hell, as conceived of by most Christians, doesn't exist. She knows that she made this evolutionary world. She knows that it's hard to incarnate in a primate body. She delights in you as you are. Indeed, she is you as you are. I want you to imagine that you're a child for a moment, and the Divine Mother in all her glory comes to you and says, "Dear, are you okay?" And you look up at her and say, "No." And she asks you, "What's going on?" And you say, "Well, you're a meanie." And she says, "What do you mean?" And you say, I don't understand all this inherent guilt stuff. What's this business around sin and you being mad at me and judging me all the time just for being human? And what about hell? My best friend is a Muslim, is a Hindu, is a atheist, doesn't believe in Jesus. You're gonna send them to hell? And the Divine Mother listens to you patiently, lovingly. And after you've said everything you need to, she pauses for a moment. She looks you in the eye with great tenderness and cherishment and says, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Some of my children on earth are quite lost and confused. And I'm hearing that they've told you some things about me, have had a really big impact on you and caused you a great deal of distress. I want you to know none of it's true. I love you all just as you are. And when you pass from this body, I will be right there welcoming you home." Indeed, from the non-dual perspective, we're already home. So welcome. Welcome. You look at her, feeling a lot better after you've been able to get it all out and she's responded in such a loving way. And now you pause for a moment. Remember, you're a kid. And you say, "Well, I forgive you." And then you waddle on over to her. You give her a big hug. And then you run off to go and play and get into some good trouble. I'm going to be talking about practices related to forgiveness that you can apply in your own life in another video so that this one doesn't get too long. I'm going to conclude by saying forgiveness is an opening of the heart. It is an alchemical transformation of pain and contraction into safety and openness. It doesn't just heal us, it mends and reconfigures the relational space, generating new possibilities for connection and co-creation. We can move out of identification with our stories or deeper into our stories, cognitive forgiveness, and then allow a deep tending to the vulnerability and pain beneath, somatic forgiveness, and let go, let God, and let love. And as I've said somewhere before, in my video on saying I'm sorry, when we step into love, we change the world. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more content like this, subscribe. And if you have any comments, questions, feedback for me, leave it in the comments section below. I wrote an article on this, which you can find linked in my Substack in the description. And if you're interested to learn more about me and my services as a psycho-spiritual counselor, my website is also linked in the description below. Again, thank y'all so much. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.